Hi, I'm Rob Vlock.
And I'm David Arenthal. Both Rob and I are principals at Mach10 Career and Leadership Coaching.
Welcome to Mach10 Works. This is a series of conversations Dave and I will be having pretty much about all things career. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the most basic questions you could possibly ask about careers and working, and that is, why do we work?
Rob, that is an excellent question. and whether you're looking for a new job, you're looking to expand your responsibilities through a promotion, or you want to earn more income, you want to become a better leader, it's a question that's critical, both for you as an individual and for your organization, because it's really the only way to grow, realize your potential, and realize also the organization's potential.
Well, so I have to ask you, Dave, you knew I was going to put you on the spot with this, but what is the answer to that? Why do we actually work?
Well, let's start with the obvious.
Okay.
We work at the most basic level to cover our basic needs. What are those needs? We need to eat. We need to be safe. Yes, that's part of housing, living somewhere. And we want to be healthy. And that really connects to the two fundamental drivers of our behavior, which is we want to be well and survive. So at the most basic level, we work to cover our basic needs.
That sounds perfectly reasonable. Being well and surviving are they're very high on my list of things to do on a daily basis. So it sounds reasonable, is it? Is this really a reasonable reason to work?
Well, it is certainly the starting point. But when you drive through some of the wealthier neighborhoods, the wealthier communities, you have to ask yourself, wait a second, what is having a 7,000 square foot house, a giant pool, and multiple maybe apartments across the world, what does that have to do with being well and surviving? So it's a fundamental question. And it brings up the whole question about this drive for wealth. And that brings up the question or the concept of the hedonic treadmill, which some of you may or may not be familiar with. You know, the whole idea of the hedonic treadmill, which is really a metaphor, is the idea that we work and we constantly want more. And when we achieve more, we go right back to the baseline level of happiness. And it becomes a treadmill. And we work harder and harder to get to something that we think is important to us that will raise our level of happiness and fulfillment and satisfaction. And we go right back to our level of happiness, and it's off to the next goal.
So it sounds like what you're saying is no matter how hard we work to achieve more, to get more material things, it's really not going to make us much happier.
Well, there's more than just wealth. There's also prestige and status. That's also another reason why we work. We want to be respected. We want to be relevant in our community. And the more responsibility we have, and in certain professions, we feel more respected. The community gives us more respect. And that makes us feel good.
But is that a bad thing? Feeling like we want to get respect from other people in our community. Is it a bad thing in and of itself?
Not necessarily, not inherently. I think the question is, as we pursue, so we started with our basic needs. We want to survive, we want to be well, so we need to eat, we need to be safe, and we need to be healthy. Now we're pursuing wealth, we're pursuing status. In pursuit of that, the real question is, how well is that aligned with our inner truth? And our inner truth is what gives us meaning and what matters to us. If there's a gap between our inner truth and the inner truth that our behavior suggests, that's a dangerous path.
So it sounds like we could very easily, in pursuit of status and wealth and respect, end up doing a job we absolutely despise just so other people will look at us in a favorable light.
And that is the trap. The trap is culture has told us, our culture has told us, and culture is a construct, that these are the jobs, these are the careers that our community will respect. These are the careers that our community will make us feel relevant. These are the jobs that will make us wealthy, because we think wealth, it all connects with prestige and status. But in fact, we don't really enjoy, we don't find rewarding, and we don't really get much meaning from what we're doing.
Makes total sense. Now, you and I are career and leadership coaches, so it means I have to ask you this question. What can people do about that?
Well, I guess I would add 4 points and 4 other reasons why we work.
Okay.
So we started with a baseline of, at the basic level, eat, be safe, healthy, wellness, survive. That is nature. That is driving much of our behavior and how we feel. But let's start with the first one, which is we work with people who share our values. And I'm going to give you 2 examples.
Okay.
In certain professions, you'll be asked to work to midnight. You'll go home and you'll earn your badge of honor. And your colleagues around you, most of them will think that is grit, and that's a good thing. And your boss may think that's grit, and that's a good thing. And that may be what drives promotions. But then you'll have to ask yourselves, do you want to be working until midnight? Never mind the weekends.
Yes.
Now, there's the alternative, which is you have a leader, you have an organization that believes in erecting certain boundaries around your professional and personal life. And there is a celebration of finding the balance between hard work and family time. That's a value. That's a belief. Does your boss, do your colleagues, if that's important to you and your organization, is that something they embrace? These are questions you need to ask yourself and be honest with yourself about.
Yes, I think we've probably all been in jobs where you've been expected to put in all that extra time, and if it's not making you happy, that's a real problem.
But it might.
It
might make you happy. There is that issue of whether it will lead to burnout.
Right.
And burnout is can be very dangerous. But it's really about what you believe in yourself and what matters to you. There may be periods of your life where you actually want to work that hard. There may not be.
Right.
There may be periods of your life where you don't want to have to work until midnight because you're worrying about other things. You have other priorities.
Of course. So values is the first point we need to think about. What's the second point?
I think the second point is the one that everybody is talking about these days, which is purpose.
Right.
Does what you do matter to you? Is what you're doing, what your organization doing, is that something that you can connect to, that gives you meaning? If it doesn't give you meaning, there's going to come a point where you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, aside from meeting your basic needs. And you may ask yourself the question, is there another way to meet your basic needs? Because you don't really care about what you're doing or what your organization is doing.
That sounds like a great question to ask. Meeting your needs in a way that makes you miserable might be a red flag for people, right?
Yeah.
What about the third point people have to think about?
Well, in many ways, the third point is the most interesting and in some ways most obvious, but may not for everybody. Do you feel like you're accomplishing much at work? Are you getting positive feedback? Do you see that what you're doing is contributing to advancing the goal of the organization, advancing the goal of your team? Now, some of this has to do with leadership. Do you get positive feedback when you do something which is an accomplishment? Do you get positive feedback from the organization? Are these sorts of things celebrated on your team? And by the way, what you're accomplishing doesn't matter to you because that comes back to purpose. If you're accomplishing something that's irrelevant to you or relevant to the organization, I'm not sure that's going to be the kind of accomplishment that's going to motivate you. And that's really the real term, which is, are you motivated in what you do? Now, being motivated is a tricky thing. If you're in a job where your skills exceed the difficulty of the role, you probably will become bored and disillusioned. You will lose some motivation. If, on the other hand, you're in a job that vastly exceeds your skill set, now that could be emotional or kind of a technical skill, you're going to struggle. And unless you have an organization or a leader, a boss, who's willing to invest in you so that you struggle less, you want to be challenged. But if you're excessively challenged and fail, you're going to become unhappy. So it's really finding that balance between too hard and too easy. I think I read that there's some empirical evidence that you always want to do something that's 4% harder than it would be a perfect bullseye. If it's below a bullseye and too easy, you're bored. If it's at 110% or 10% too hard, you'll get frustrated.
Right.
So this balance is really very critical.
Balance is critical.
Yes.
And it means being in a job where leadership, where your boss can appreciate that need for balance, what you can do, who is willing to work with you to make sure you are being challenged, but not too challenged.
And a lot of that comes back to whether or not your leader or boss understands that a significant part of his or her job is to help you find that balance. Because if he or she does not help you find that balance, you will eventually leave, you will get burnt out, or you will lose interest.
Right, which is a terrible thing for you as the individual, but it's awful for the organization as well.
Totally.
They don't want to lose talent.
And that comes back to where we started, which was it's really about finding the potential and realizing the potential of every individual in their organization. Now, again, that does not mean that an individual who, frankly, is not aligned with the position, who doesn't have the skill set, or is unable to perform the job, it doesn't mean you're supposed to necessarily encourage that person to stay on, because what it may mean for you as a leader is that you actually want to work with that individual and make a decision whether they're just misplaced and would do better in another organization or within another area of your organization, or if they can be trained to actually achieve that task.
Not always an easy thing for leaders to understand in organizations, right? So that's where some leadership coaching can help as well. But there's a fourth point about why we work, in addition to meeting our basic needs as well. So what is that?
Well, the fourth one is a bit of a transversal, if you will. The fourth one touches really the first three in many ways. And it's often called emotional acuity. It sounds like a fancy name, but at the most basic level, it's am I in touch with my feelings? Do I pay attention to my feelings? Am I curious about my feelings? Or do I push away my feelings? Many people push away their feelings because they're not necessarily things that they want to feel. This job is uncomfortable, and I feel like I'm not doing a good job, or I'm bored, yet I earn a good income, and it gives me the status in my community and within my family and group of friends. There could be a conflict there. So it's critical to understand whether you share the values of those around you, to really pay attention to whether something matters to you and gives you purpose, and whether or not you feel like you found that balance between the challenge of the job and the role and what you're able to contribute, accomplish. That's the emotional acuity that is so essential to finding purposeful, rewarding work that's sustainable and that you can feel more at ease about.
It's probably important, though, to point out that being aware of your feelings, paying attention to how your emotions are at work when you are doing your day-to-day job is quite different from oversharing those emotions. Everyone has a bad day. It's important to be aware of that, to process it, but not necessarily to march off to your boss and give them a piece of your mind or her. Right?
Well, you definitely have to be judicious about what to do with how you engage with those emotions.
Right.
In certain cases, you should be curious about your emotions.
Sure.
In other cases, your emotions are alerts. They're alerting you to the fact that you love something. They're alerting you to the fact that you really enjoy writing memos, or don't enjoy writing memos, or enjoy statistical analysis, or don't enjoy statistical analysis. But it's really paying attention to those alerts. And by the way, sometimes it's not easy to interpret those alerts. So you need to be curious about those alerts. And that's really what emotional acuity is about, being able to take those emotional alerts and know what to do with them and how to engage with them.
That's fantastic. Love that idea. So if someone is watching this and they are hearing what we have to say, and they're an individual employee, and they're just saying, I'm just not really happy with where I am right now. There's something that could be better about my work. What do you suggest they do?
The time for self-reflection starts now. I do think that a coach, a third party, if you will, a coach, a leadership coach, a career coach, and sometimes the distinction is not clear, I think they can be very helpful in helping individuals discover what is holding them back from where they want to be. I think it's true for leaders of organizations. If they want to be a better leader, it's important to know what they could do to be a better leader. And as self-leaders, which are really individuals, to understand what would be more aligned with making me or the individual realize their potential at work. I think coaches can be extremely helpful.
It sounds like they could be. And it does sound like there is an interrelation between individuals, their happiness, their productivity, their fit in the organization, and the leadership, that they are not in silos. I think a lot of people think, you move up, you become a manager, you become a leader, and then you're doing management and leadership things. But there has to be that connection, right? Between, you need to understand as a leader what is going on with your teams, and how to keep them motivated and happy, just as we've been talking about.
Yeah, so I'll share just a quick anecdote. When I became CEO of a 150-person organization in Europe, it dawned upon me that, I felt, oh, wow, I'm CEO of a large organization in Europe. But it dawned upon me that actually it was a big responsibility. And that responsibility included 150 people and their lives. And it was a little daunting. It became less about maybe the status of it and the income producing part of it, and more about, oh my God, this is a role where I have to change how I prioritize my time and how I assess my performance. And I think that is true. When we promote it, we feel good about it. But we have to understand that we're now taking on a new role. And the skill set, the repertoire of skills that are required to be effective are somewhat modified.
Right. Of course, it makes perfect sense. So I think that's about it for today's episode about why we work. We would love to have a conversation with you. If you're watching what we are talking about and thinking, that makes a lot of sense. I think makes a lot of sense, don't you? If you're watching it and you would like to have a conversation with us, just go to Mach10career.com. Check out what we have to offer. Or you can give us a ring, 617-529-8795, and we can talk to you. You can send us an email.
And Rob and I will be doing these, once or twice a month. Our intention is simply to share all the things that we've learned. And if these can be helpful to you, thank you for tuning in.
Thanks so much for watching. We will see you next time. I'm Rob Vlock.
And I'm David Ehrenthal.
And keep working.
And we are Mach10 Career and Leadership Coaching.
See you next time.
Bye.